Welcome to Headlines. This is David Lichtenstein here in the Yeshiva Shalmaila. We're going to continue last week's program about Indian here in Shaitel, and I got a lot of calls, and a number of them felt that I was biased. I didn't put on enough of the anti. So this week we're going to continue. We're going to start off with a recap of last week's, a short recap, maybe 7 or 8 minutes of the main bullet points of the prior last week's. And then we will have a new group of speakers. We will have Rabbi Bone, who's written about it extensively. He's the Mechaber, he's the author of Halacha Berurahwith. We will have an Indian priest on telling us how he understands hair tonsuring, the shaving of the heads. Then we will have Rabbi Lazer Pashkez, he's a Ram in Klausenberg, who spent a lot of time researching this topic. And then we will have Mrs. Berger, who is the primary researcher for the anti-Indian hair components, so it should be an interesting program. Our British number had a number of problems a few weeks ago. Our England, United Kingdom, it is working. It is 330-117-0250. That's 330-117-0250. And our Israeli number, which had a little bit of a hiccup, is also working fine. It's 02, that's Yerushalayim, 372-0304. Before we go back to the question of the Indian Shaitel, I would like to, just after working on this topic for a few weeks, some interesting thoughts. One is that we don't know. We've had a number of experts, and we'll hear some people who claim to be experts. Some people are paskening from the internet and from internet comic books, etc., as to what the intent of the galachim are. Many experts say clearly it was established emitarlo, and you'll hear our priests, etc., that say clearly it is not takrevis avodah zarah. Let's assume for a moment it's not clear. I concede we have disagreements. We have Rabbi Donner, we have a number of other rabbanim who say that no, that's not the intent of the thing. So the question is, we don't know what the intent is. So it's a suffix. Another suffix is, we certainly don't know the intent of the Oivdei avodah zarah. Like the people who go then shave their heads. Well, some people think like this, some people think like that. It's another suffix. A third suffix is, and here's a suffix that we will speak about Rabbi Bone briefly, is if somebody were to go into a church and shave their head in front of Isaiah Ish and say he's doing it as a gift, the priest would chase him out with a broom and say, why are you making our church dirty? In other words, the idea being is whose job is it to be koveya, what is an avodah? Is it the church and its kaimrim, its galachim, its the establishment, the institution? Or could any group of random oivdim say, no, we're doing something different? Now, we believe, we have a few rayas, it's not clear, but it's sad to say that if you go to a church and you start cutting your hair or dancing the kazatska, the hora, that it's nothing, you're just a meshugana, right? Even if 1 million people do it, but it's the institution of the church that establishes avodah zarah. So even if the people did have this kavana to do it as a takrevis, it would still be nothing because it's shaloi kederach avodah. It's not an avodah. It's not up to them to be kaveya. So we have two sfekas, at least a sfeka. What is the intent? What is the meaning of the galachim? And does it even matter what these people are thinking if the galachim or kaveya under it? Now, why is this the Because the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kuf Yud says that if something is a suffix, whether it's avodah zarah, and here we have 2 sfekas or 3 sfekas, right? Then it's batal in the second iruv, when it gets put into its second grouping, right? Even though it's echad be'elef le batal, and its second irvuv. So this would have a real implication, and this, to me, is not even a suffix anymore. It's a sfeka. At the very least, I think Rabbi Dana would have to concede that we're not sure who's the kaveya here. Now, additionally, in Rabbi Yashiv's letter to Rabbi Belsky, he writes 75% of the hair comes from the temples. And we've had the number one expert in the world, who's Atarya, who spent 30 years. She didn't do it off the internet. She spent a dozen years in India, and she says, no, it's a real minority, right? So I just think that a lot of the information here that the Rabbanim have seems to be questionable, and that is something that we are struggling with. So this is my aura, and I want to again say, please do not paskin from this show. This is just to be ma'ira, just to make you better informed, to allow you to ask better shilas. I plead with you not to listen, take anything like this halacha lamaisa. Ask your local Talmud Chacham, Paisik, who knows his way around Hilchos Avodah Zarah. And that's it, and now let's go to the program. I want to emphasize something that my Yedid, a guy in Rabbi Leibowitz, said. Please do not paskin from this radio program. Ask your local, qualified Rav or Talmud Chacham or Dayan who understands this. And I would also like to say that we did ask Rabbi Sharf of Kedassia, who is, one of the fierce opponents of India, and here he actually accompanied Rabbi Donner to India, if he would come on and talk about his experience, and he declined. Rabbi Donner, we reached out to Rabbi Donner. He said he would do a face-to-face interview at a later date when he's in America. So it could be that Oid Chazayin L'Moed, we will actually interview Rabbi Donner about this as well. So this should be a very interesting program. Before we begin, let's do our weekly Halacha Shayla. I'll give you two this week. By the way, last week we had fabulous. We asked a question about Afikomen. We got maybe 50 or 60 people who responded. We will play at the end on a sample of that, and we will be made to do a raffle every week. We will choose between all the winning answers, and we will send them the two. This is a little bit prejudiced here. A free copy of the last two volumes of Headlines, which I'm sure if you're a listener you'll enjoy. So here are two questions for this week. The Chida writes in Avodas HaKodesh at Siman Zayin, Eisreish Zayin, that if you forget one night of Sfiras Omer, he said his exact lashon is Lamafreya hayu kol habrachos milayla she'avru levatala. He obviously learns that it's one long series of mitzvahs, and if you forget one, you broke the chain, and it's a bracha Lamafreya. And bittul mitzvah saseh, and you mevatel mitzvah sfiras omer. So here's my easier shaila of the night, my easier riddle. Taisvis in Ksubis on Ayin Beis Amud Aleph, it's Divrei Amaschil v'Safra Allah, says that by a zava you don't make a bracha. Why? Because you're afraid the person will forget. I'm sorry, I apologize. He says by a zava you don't make a bracha, that you're afraid that after she has days of that on the kiyum that she's not pilot, that she doesn't see dam, that she will then be a raya, and therefore will be oiker the yemei tahara, and all the brachas will be lemafreya bracha levatala. And he says we can't have where something occurs later that causes it to be a bracha levatala retroactively. So what's the difference? By a zava you don't count, and by Sfiras Omer we do count, even though if you forget one night you're an Oinus, Lamafreya, it comes out that the entire thing was a bracha levatala. This is our easier shaila. And for those of you who want something a little more difficult, here's an interesting question. Taisus and Psachim, that Tzadik Tes says, and it's brought by many of the Paiskim, that he says by Pesach you should not eat the matzah until it's night. Even though there's a din of Taisvis Yamtif, but even so you don't eat till the night, because it says Balayla Taichlu Matzis, and there's a hekish of matzah and mur lePesach. So with this hekish, because of the hekish of Balayla, we say you have to eat the matzah mur dafka Balayla. This is widely quoted in Sukkah, etc., in many places. That there's no Taisvis Yamtif. The same thing by Achila b'Sukkah the first night. Okay, now for the harder riddle. Taisim Sachim Tzadik Tes says that you have to eat the matzah dafka balayla, and you don't say Taisis Yamtif, because there's a hekish of be'erev taichlu matzis, right? And since there's a din of laila, so it has to be, there's no Taisis Yamtif, and it has to be dafka by night, and I believe the Taz, etc., by Sukkah say the same thing. You make a hekish, tesvav, dafka balayla. But the Taz says, in Tafresh Samaches, that's only, well, I'm ad-libbing a little bit, that's only by matzah and by the first days of Sukkot, because you have a hekish. But the second day, by Shmini Atzeres, if you makabel Shmini Atzeres early, You could eat outside the sukkah because it's not sukkahs anymore. Taisvis Yom Tov is as if it's Yom Tov, period. So it's in the afternoon, the sun is shining, you're eating Shmini Atzeres in the house because it's Taisvis Yom Tov. So the question is that the Mishnah Berurah, you see in Taf Pei Tes of Gimel, here in Sfiras Eimer, that's why this is relevant, he brings many achrayim, a whole tekel of the achrayim, that if you makabel Shabbos and you mispal Ma'ariv early, so you would say, okay, it's not Friday anymore, it's Shabbos, I have Taisvis Shabbos. Well, why can't you count Sfiras Eimer? Taisvis Shabbos should say, you don't have a Hekish here anymore. So just like Taisvis Shabbos, Taisvis Yom Tov says you could eat outside the sukkah, if you makabel Shmini Atzeres early, so the sun is shining on Hoshana Rabbah, the sun is shining into your becha, and you're eating in the house, why don't you say the same thing? You makabel Shabbos early, you say Taisvis Shabbos has a din of Kedusha Shabbos, and therefore count Sfiras Eimer Friday afternoon. That is the second, I think, a little more difficult riddle. We will play an answer next week at the end of the program, and we will be neda for the winning answer. We'll choose one of them. We'll send them a gift. Before we begin this week's program, I'd like to say a little thought. This week is going to be Lag BaOmer. And there's a lot of pshatim, but let me share something that I think this is headlines. We like to do something that's current and little halacha and current halacha and little politicals. Let me share with you a thought. What is so special about Lag BaOmer? And there's different thoughts. I'm not so satisfied. What is it? Lag BaOmer that day, it's, we take one day in the thing. Why was that? So you say that's the day that they stopped dying. Well, why that day? Why didn't they stop dying a day later, a day earlier? It's not a coincidence that on the Yom Lamed Gimel BaOmer all this occurred. Like somebody said, isn't it an amazing coincidence that Abraham Lincoln is buried, that Ulysses Grant is buried in the Grant tomb? No, it's not a coincidence. So why does all this happen on Lag BaOmer? So let me share with you a machshava. There's 49 days to the Eimer, right? If you divide it into thirds, 16, 32, 48. So Lag BaOmer is the inflection point of the last third. It's the first day of the last third. It's really 16.6666, 16.66. So Lag BaOmer is the day mathematically is the beginning of the last third. Now we know in Yiddishkeit thirds are very important. What do we see? We have Chut HaMeshulish, Loi Bimhera Yinatek. We have Avram, we have Yitzchak, and Yaakov. What was Avram? Avram did not have the Shvatim. He did not be Ma'im in 12 Shvatim. And the great Achrayim say, the Balei Machshava say, Avram was the kindest man who ever lived. When you think of Avram, you think of any type of social programs, soup kitchens, you think of free gifting, totally turning your eye away to almost any evil that somebody does. Avram only sees good. Totally good. Kili Eilam Chazda is Avram. His son Yitzchak is diametrically opposed. Yitzchak is din. What does din mean? You get exactly what you deserve. The halacha says, Ein rachamim bedin. And when you go to court, you could say, look, I stole, but my father was nasty to me. My mother left me. I was molested. Ein rachamim bedin. You owe the money. I'm sorry. So din is exactly measured, right? Diametrically opposed to his father. Yaakov is nonlinear. Rachmim is when you combine, you fuse chesed and din. Rachmim means where it's appropriate, right? And where it's not appropriate, you don't have rachmim. We said, Kol ha-merachem al ha-achzarim, soifei la-achzir al ha-rachmanim. Rachmim is, it's measured, but it's not as measured as din. It's kindness and measurement combined, right? The third way. And what does that mean? That means Avram couldn't be Maimid Yud Beis Shvatim, because whenever you're on one side, all the way at the edge, you're not the Derech HaMamutza, you can't be. It's not nuanced. It's not iterative. It's not. It's not balanced. You have to get it to get to Yaakov, right? Yaakov Padas Avram. He takes the Chesed and he measures it. You have to start off that way. Yitzchak din, pure din. Ein olam eskayim bedin. Shitefi maybe this harachamim. But you have to have it to get the rachmim. You can't have Rachman without going through Chesed and Din. But something, it's all the way on the other side. It's all the way on Tzad Smoil Din. Rachman is where you say, let's be nuanced. Let's measure carefully. And why is it? Where do you see that in today's days? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they're living with us, but it's long ago, right? You see, I saw this week in Satmar, children dressed up like Holocaust survivors, not Holocaust survivors, like people in the concentration camp. Two fat kids dressed up like in the concentration. There was nobody fat in the concentration camps. Marching, holding the Israeli flag, that it's equivalent. And you know what? We all agree there's problems in Israel, but to compare it to the concentration camps, it's just crazy. It's not nuanced. It's mishuga. It's off the charts. It's fanatical. Right? And we see that every day. You know, we see fanatics to the left, we see fanatics to the right. And you know what? Fanaticism there is an element of it that maybe we can get from it, but it's nish normal. And what does it mean? The memches drachim shatayras niknas b'hem, which start we leave Pesach as slaves. We were ignorant, and the path to be makabel the Torah, the path to das, the path to enlightenment. What does it say? There's going to be three parts to it. You're going to be inspired one way. You're going to be inspired the other way. And you know what? The last third, Yaakov Chevel Nachlasai, the Chotam Sholish, that is when you can take the left and the right and balance it and sein normal, right? That is the real end of the journey towards das, towards, the Rambam writes, the Derech HaMamutza. So we have 16 days and we have 16 days, Lev. And Lag BaOmer means the last part of this trip. It says, take all these memches tvarim and use them in a normal and balanced way. And I said over a story a while ago. I'll share with you two stories. I was sitting with somebody, a friend of mine last night, and his father died when he was 18. And he said, when I was in yeshiva, we spoke about everything, learning, davening. He said, nobody ever spoke to me about what does it feel like not to have a father. So when we take Torah is meant to be to use it, but to use it in a balanced way. I said over a story a while ago. So you have this fellow, he's cleaning for Pesach, a good erlich, a guy, mamish, and somebody knocks on the door, and he opens the door, and it's a collector, it's a schlepper, and he says, could you give me some food? I'm hungry. He says, I'm cleaning the house for Pesach. I didn't know, when did you even clean your pockets? Don't come, I'm sorry, I can't. Tries to slam the door, and the guy said, listen, I'm telling you, I'm starving. I didn't eat in 3 days. I can't now. I'm telling you, I'm focused on. So he says, I'm not leaving. So the guy says he has no brera. So he ran into the kitchen, and luckily in the garbage, they hadn't thrown out the garbage yet. There was a loaf of moldy fish, gefilte fish, from Purim. So he runs out to the guy. He says, look, this is the last piece of something. Have some chametz, take it out of the house with you and eat it. And he slams the door, and he looks out the window, and the guy gobbles the fish up. But it was moldy fish, and suddenly he sees the guy start vomiting and retching, and he's pounding on the pavement. And then he goes, comatose. Comatose! Oh my goodness! Runs to the garage, pulls out his minivan, grabs the guy, pulls him into the minivan, takes him to the hospital, to the emergency room. 2 days later, he goes visit the guy. He's declining. He's in critical care. A day later, he hears he died. Runs to the Levaya. Goes to be Menachem Avel. A few days later, this guy's wife sees him, and he says, Reb Zalman, tell me, or Reb Chaim, tell me, why are you so? You see me. His wife says to him, you see so besimcha today. He said, I am besimcha. She says, why? He says, just imagine, with one piece of fish, how many mitzvahs could you do? I was mekayim with a piece of fish. Hachnasas archem. I was mekayim hatzala, mitzvahs hatzala, loitamid al damriyacha. I was mekayim biker cholim. I was mekayim levayas hameis. And then nicham avelim. All such as chus. How many mitzvahs you can be mekayim with one piece of fish? Right? So what does this mean? Avadir is memches dvarim shatayr niknis pem. That each one could be distorted. Each one could be twisted, distorted, right? So what does it say? Yes, there's the first 32, the 33rd, when it's Midas Yaakov, what does it mean? To balance. No. Giving gefilte fish to a guy at the that is not using the Torah appropriately. By the karbanis, it says you need a reyach nichayach. It's not enough if there's a carbon. If the scent that comes from it is not a pure and a beautiful scent. If you are trying to confuse the smoke that came out of the smoke sticks of Auschwitz, if you're lying on the floor like we saw people saying, La Auschwitz v'loy tzava, the followers of a certain Adam, right? That is not the derech hamamutza. That is the message. So what is the message of Lag BaOmer? We're going towards Shavuos. We're going towards Kabbalah Atarya. Make sure that the memches dvarim leave you with a reach dichayach, a derech hamamutza, that something's beautiful, that when somebody looks at me or looks at you, what do they say? Baruch Alekai Shimon ben Shatach. I think that is a beautiful message for Lag BaOmer. Let's go to our guests.
We have on the phone with us from Lakewood, New Jersey, Rabbi Bone. He's a musmach of Rav Belsky Zechariah Levracha, a Talmud of Reb Shlomo Miller. He's a Maggid Shir in Yeshivas Mein Talmud. He's also, for many years, the author and the editor of the column Halacha Brura. Welcome, Rabbi Bone.
Thank you very much for having me.
Rabbi Bone, we're doing a program, a shir about Shaitel, and we're curious as to, you wrote about it extensively. What it was Rabbi Belsky's opinion? Walk us through some of what working on this issue has sort of been megala to you, both from the Metzias and from Halacha.
Sure. So I wrote on this topic, I would say it's probably close to 15 years ago. But just as an introduction, I once heard quoted B'Shem Yerushalayim Zalman in a few places where he mentioned that many of these tumults, if you want to call it, that affect the halachic world have about a 10-15 year life cycle, where many of the same tumults resurface every 10 to 15 years with some minor changes. In Shaitel in particular, the Shiloh was first raised like in the 70s, I believe, and at that time it was presented to many of the Gedolei Yisrael, including Ramesha Feinstein, Yerushalayim Zalman, and at that time, even Rav Yashiv held that it was permitted. It resurfaced again about 15 years later, and then again probably about another 15 years later. So you really see the life cycle of this Shiloh. Rav Yashiv about 15 years ago.
But there is nothing in writing from Rav Moshe about this. Am I correct?
There is nothing in writing, but there's quite a number of Talmidim that I've spoken to then that have discussed the question with Rav Moshe, and Rav Moshe held, again, based on what was presented to him, that it's not Avodah Zarah. So there's really two questions that need to be addressed here. Number one, the act that's performed there. Does that act render the here takrei this Avodah Zarah, which is one of the categories of things done to an idol that make it forbidden? And B, does the here that we actually get in our Shaitel, even if we get Indian Shaitel, does it actually originate from the temple, from the Beis Avodah Zarah or not? So those are really the two questions that have to be analyzed and looked into.
Okay, so start at the beginning.
So when I delved into the question about 15 years ago, I was in touch both very much with Rabbi Belsky, who made his opinion very clear based on research that he's done and people who he's spoken to, including, which we'll touch upon, many Balei Tshuva and Gerim that were part of this Hindu religion and actually were part of these services and were offering their recollection and their understanding on how it's done. In addition, I was in touch with Diane Dunner from England, who was sent down b'shlichus by Rav Yashiv and by other Gedolei Bnei Yisrael to actually go to India and research on his own and bring back his recollection. In analyzing, and Diane Dunner's shlichus, let me just emphasize on this, was primarily on discovering whether the act itself is Avodah Zarah. He didn't touch upon the latter question, whether the here itself originates, while there are others that did research, or perhaps maybe He himself did research at a later time, but his original shlichus was really to come to an understanding whether the act is avodah zarah. So in getting some type of basic, without getting too complicated, hilchas avodah zarah, and when I delved into it, it's one of these topics that there really aren't too many people that you could speak to about, because it's an obscure topic that even when people are learning Masechtas Avodah Zarah, they really don't get into the nitty-gritties of it. And just for me, being a Talmud by Rabelsky, it was an amazing for me to see how you were able to talk to him even early on, before he really this topic became popular, how fluent he was in every nuance in the sugya of Avodah Zarah, the same way as he was familiar with Hilchos Shabbos and the like. And not only in the sugya of Avodah Zarah, I spent quite some time doing research on the topic. Somebody once walked into my room when I was researching it, and he had the impression that, like, he asked me if I was converting religions because my desk was full of articles on the Hindu religion.
Okay.
And
so tell me, so what did you discover?
So familiar with that.
So what did you discover?
So the question really comes down, the crux of the question is as follows. In order for something to be considered Tekredes Avodah Zarah, that's when you're giving a gift to the Avodah Zarah. Now, just giving a gift to the Avodah Zarah doesn't necessarily make it forbidden, unless it's a gift that was actually given in the Beis HaMikdash, such as meat, oil, and the like. If you're giving a gift to Avodah Zarah, something that was not given in the Beis HaMikdash, it has to resemble one of the Maaseh Avodah that was done in the Beis HaMikdash. So one of the Maaseh Avodah was Shchita. And the Gemara says that if you go ahead and you do any cutting action or even a breaking action, that resembles Shchita. So let's say you break a stick in front of an Avodah Zarah, and you give the stick to the Avodah Zarah. So you, broke it in front of the Avodah Zarah, and you gave it to the Avodah Zarah. That makes that stick forbidden as Tekredes Avodah Zarah. So in part of this Hindu belief, there's a temple, the Tirupati temple, which is located on a mountain in India. There's about 50,000 pilgrims that go there daily. Now, part of their service, or I shouldn't say service, because that's the question we need to analyze if it's a service, but part of the activities that they perform there's a barbershop, quite a number of barbershops there. The main barbershop has about 25,000 people daily attending, where they would either shave off their entire heads or just a few locks of their heads. And then from that point, they go to a ritual bath, and then they wait online to actually pass through their idol. And the question is, when they're removing their hair, why are they removing it? So Rabelsky and myself, we've spoken to quite a number of Bali Tshuva and Gerim on the topic, and Dayan Dunner went down there to analyze this question. Dayan Dunner spoke to a few people when he was there, and they mentioned that they're offering it to the hair to their Avodah Zarah. So the question was, here there's a cutting action. They're cutting the hair. They're offering it to their Avodah Zarah, and they're doing it by the temple mount. So does that classify these three categories? A, it's in front of the Avodah Zarah. B, is cutting it, and they're giving it as a gift to the Avodah Zarah. So Dayan Dunner needed to analyze, number one, is this called in front of the Avodah Zarah? So the barbershop is actually not in the same location where the main temple is, although it's on the mountain. It's in a whole separate area and a separate building of it. But he got the feeling that the entire temple mount is one big base Avodah Zarah, because there are all different types of rituals being done on that temple mount. And there was others that disagreed with that point, saying that doesn't constitute it l'fnei Avodah Zarah. So that's the first question. Is it l'fnei Avodah Zarah? But more importantly, when they're cutting the hair, many of them told him that they're offering it to their Avodah Zarah. Rabbi Belsky spoke to, and from my research, quite a number of Bali Tshuva and Gerim, and they mentioned that it's not a gift that they're actually giving to Avodah Zarah. The process involves a removing something that represents a level of vanity, a level of gaiva, and here it's considered, while it's on someone's head, a big act of gaiva, that somebody has beautiful hair on their head. So by actually cutting the hair off your head, you are relinquishing that level of ego, that level of gaiva that's attached, and
even though the websites do say that, even though the websites do say that there's a whole story that this Avodah Zarah lost the hair in the middle of his head and he wanted the hair back, and this other Avodah Zarah came and made magic and the hair grew back in the middle of his head. So it does seem at some level that it's considered an offering from the Avodah Zarah when you read the story that precedes it.
So there's so many versions of the stories that are put up there. The overwhelming majority of the stories that I've read.
This is the story basically on the main website. There's some deity that got bald in the middle of their head and was very traumatized by becoming bald, which is something that a lot of American males, which is why, the old, snake oil salesman is where we get that metaphor from. And this Avodah got traumatized, and it was clearly before propecia or hair transplants or whatever. So this other Avodah Zarah came, and because that's where this website says it stems from. So even if it's sacrificing of the vanity, it does seem there is an element of the Avodah Zarah missing its hair. Just
so
to be,
it's definitely
honest,
missing
right?
the hair. The question is missing the hair, so I'm replenishing your hair, or missing your hair, so therefore my act of somewhat atonement is that I need to resemble that Avodah Zarah by having myself be missing hair as well. And that's what the Bali Tshuva and the Gerim really felt. And one point they mentioned, that it's illogical for anyone who knows the basics of that religion to say that they're actually giving it to the Avodah Zarah, because here in their religion is considered one of the most tamedika items. And they work with a class system of a hierarchy. The people who are very low down on that chain are the barbers, and the people even lower than that are the people who collect the hair, because they're somewhat getting contaminated by touching the hair. So they said it would be completely illogical for someone who understands the religion to say, here I'm taking the thing that's the most davar tameh and giving it as a present to the Avodah Zarah. It's something that will be like an insult to the Avodah Zarah. What's really happening is they're removing the hair in front of the Avodah Zarah in order, whether they want to resemble the Avodah Zarah losing his hair, or they want to remove their vanity in front of the Avodah Zarah, but they're not really giving it as a gift. And also part of the question is, the one who's doing the mice of cutting aren't the people. It's the barbers. So what's more importantly is, the question is, the barbers, are they intending to be doing a maisa of abdus, of Avodah Zarah, while they're cutting the hair? And that's an important point, because the guy who's getting the haircut, he could have whatever intent is needed.
We have to start, basically, we have to start fahering the barbers and asking them their intent.
Exactly. So when Dayan Dunner himself admitted, when he went down there, he said most of the barbers, they were involved in idle chit-chat. They were talking politics. They were cracking jokes with each other. And he asked them, like, why they do it. So one guy said, because we get paid. So even... So
you would really have to ask faher each barber and ask him what his stam lishma is. Why is he going to work, and is it really a sacrifice? So
exactly.
So the issues are really multiple. First of all, let's talk about it. Let's say the Balei Tshuva are right, or whoever you spoke to is right, and the service is really not sacrificing the hair, which is an if, right?
Correct.
But let's assume they're right. But the barbers and the people who are coming in front are Amaratzim, right? And they think that the service is cutting the hair. What would be the halacha then?
So first we would have to determine if that's what they all think. One thing which was interesting, even when Dayan Dunner spoke to many of them, there's various different dialects, and he had interpreters. And some of the Balei Tshuva and the Gerim pointed out, when they use the word offer or they use the word accept, they're not really referring to an offer as a gift. Like when we say Hashem accepts our tefillas, that doesn't necessarily mean that we gave him something. It's something that he was pleased with our tefillas. when they're offering something, it could be that they're relinquishing something to Avodah Zarah, not necessarily giving it. So that's something you have to really understand what the feeling is on the ground. But if, let's say, the barbers are essentially doing it, and despite their fact that their priests are saying this is not the Avodah Zarah, this is not the way you worship it, this has became like a new cult of how they're worshiping the Avodah Zarah based on their maratzas, quite possibly it would become usher on that point. The question really is that...
And from what I understand from Rav Belsky's letter that I wrote, he seems to imply that what Rabbi Donner was machadish is that notwithstanding that the Kaimrim, that their priests may believe one thing, the vast majority of these people are Amaratzim, and they're doing it for other reasons. So that was my understanding from what Rabbi Belsky is writing here. He says, look, that was Dayan Donner's Chiddush. What changed in the 17 years from Ramesh's Psak is the fact that he wasn't aware. But here's something that I find very interesting. Neither Rabbi Yashiv, and I went through his letters, nor Rabbi Belsky really work on, I think, what's the critical point here, and that is, who's koveya what it is service to Avodah Zarah? Let's say somebody does something that's absolutely, erroneous, and the Avodah is one thing, and he's totally doing something absurd. Well, is that Avodah Zarah or not? And there don't seem to be any proofs to that topic.
Right. Quite possibly is if a religion is started, and that can be started by individuals, where this becomes the way to be to perform it, and they realize that this might have not been the intent, but they're doing it because they feel this is what they need for the Avodah Zarah. That perhaps could become like a new religion of Avodah Zarah. But if they're making a mistake, they're complete Amarat.
My question to you is, this is not something we could sit here and pontificate about. This is where you need a Raya Gedolah from Rishonim. What is Kaveya? So let me attempt to bring a few Rayas, right? The Rambam, which seems to be the core point. Like Dayan Donner said, well, since they're making a mistake, it's Avodah Zarah. And Rabbi Belsky said, well, I don't believe they're making a mistake, it's the Kaimrim. Well, let's say he's right. So they were wrong, and he's saying that's Avodah Zarah. If you look at the Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, right away in Peri Gimel, the Rambam's pretty clear that what's Kaveya, what's Avodah Zarah is that not any single individual. Rambam's Lashon is, let me read the exact Lashon here, let me find it. Harbe Avodes Tiknu L'Shar Tzlamim L'Ficha Chapoyer Atzmi L'Mar Kol Sh'Regar L'Poyer Pater Ad She'Yavid Oisei Derech Avoidasei. So they made many different services, and the avodah has to be derech avoidasei, the way he served. Shenemer eche yavdu gayim also heim v'asakein gamani umipnei zeh inyan tzrichem bezdin leida darki avodah shein soikol evcham achedu shezuhi derech avoidasei. So there's something called the derech of its avodah, and if you come and you do your own derech avodah, it wouldn't really, it wouldn't make a difference. So if you look in the avodas hamelech over there, he says, he brings a story, the Gemara in Sanhedrin, by a Nachris that was very sick, and she said, so when she came to Baal Pa'or, she asked the Kaimrim, B'ma oivdin lezu, and that's how she served it. So the Lashon of the Gemara is Sha'ala l'Kaimrim. So you have to know what is the Derech Avodah. So if you come and you're an Amaretz, and you do the wrong Avodah, the Rambam would seem to imply it's not. And there are other ayahs. For example, there's the famous Gemara where somebody went to Baal Pa'or. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, I think it's with Safta ben Alas. He wanted to make fun of Baal Pa'or, so he defecated in front of Baal Pa'or, and then he cleansed himself on the face of the Avodah Zarah. And the Gemara says that even though he meant to be Mavazet, he was Oived Avodah Zarah because the Kaimrim said, wow, what a perfect Avodah he did. His intent was to make fun of it, but in effect he was making an Avodah, so his intent didn't matter. What mattered is this was what the Kaimrim considered its Derech Avodah. So my question would be with all this tumult, I haven't seen anybody focus on what is the core question is, can a bunch of ignorant people come ahead and say, this is how we're serving it, and if they're all wrong, is that indeed Avodah Zarah?
So that's why I mentioned before, if the people would go ahead and essentially would be starting their own new religion and saying this becomes derech avodah, then quite possibly it's a new religion.
But not if it's against, but it's not a new religion. But it's not a new religion. They're going to the same kaimrim. So is there any raya that if somebody comes and they do something absolutely incorrect, even if it's a lot of people, that it has a din of derech avodah? And if it's not, does it have any meaning?
Correct. And so that's why I mentioned earlier, and my feeling was, and the Lashon Rambam, as you indicated, does imply that, where a person is just an Amaret, and he's not really looking to start a new derech avodah. He's doing something shloike derech avodah that doesn't make it to be avodah zarah. Clearly, by tekrayvis avodah zarah, it has to be derech avodah in order for it to become usher, because it has to resemble the Beis Hamikdash, and it has to be something that this is something that's either derech avodah or something that's utilized in front of the avodah zarah in a different way. So if I would go ahead and break a stick, but the breaking the stick is not derech avodah, but I utilize a stick for the avodah zarah in a different way, that would still make it to be forbidden. But this here is not utilized in avodah zarah in any other way, so it has to be derech avodah in order for it to be usher.
Okay, and what else? Tell us somebody.
Feel that way, that it's the kaimrim that establish it. Again, unless you're starting a new religion, which doesn't seem to be the case, and definitely not the barbers. They're definitely not looking to start a new religion.
Okay, and what is it? So Rabelsky held it was mutter. Now, those Talmidim of Reb Moshe, like, did they say, did he give reasons why? Like, what was Reb Moshe's logic?
The logic then was based on the feeling and the reports that they received that this doesn't constitute tekrayvis avodah zarah. Now, those who disagreed claimed the information now changed. There's new information on the ground because we went down and we interviewed people, while there's others that said if somebody who goes down is not well versed in religion, for example, if let's say you go Matzah Shabbos in front of a shul, and you see many people standing out saying Kiddush Levana, and you're not really familiar with the practice, you'd walk away saying, hey, the Jews worship the moon. But we know that that's not the case. So you really need to be somewhat familiar with the religion before someone goes down there and starts delving into it. And the Bali Tshuva and the Gerim that were familiar said this is the furthest thing. This goes against the basic principles of the religion, because here is something that is a davar tamei, and it doesn't make sense that they'll be giving that as a gift. And then there really is the second point. Does our hair actually come from the temple? So an important aspect there is, without getting too detailed into the hair business, and I did research both based on the imports and exports of the invoices that were performed and the countries that were buying the hair and the like. There's various different grades of hair. There's something called Remy hair. What Remy hair is, when hair is cut, when hair is on a someone's head, there's various different layers that the hair has. The outer layer is the cuticle layer. Now, when you cut off hair, let's say it falls down in a barbershop on the floor, and it gets all mixed up, that hair gets completely tangled, and the only way that you could turn that into any product, you got to soak that hair into an acid bath, which removes the outside cuticle layer, and then you start processing the hair, and you could turn it into a hair extension, a wig, a toupee, or anything else of that sort. Hair needs to be processed. Is called Remy hair. And what Remy's hair mila is, when they remove the hair, they cut the hair, they put a ribbon on, let's say, the long hair, they cut it off completely, maintaining the alignment of the direction of where the hair is. So the hair doesn't get all tangled by the cuticles, each pointing in a different direction. In the temple, they sell the hair as Remy hair because they're being cut off in a barbershop, and they're taking care while they're cutting off to maintain that alignment. And that's a very, very expensive hair. Hair that you get elsewhere is not classified as that expensive grade of Remy hair. Now, part of the research that was done, the price that the temple is selling the hair is way above the price that countries like China and Korea that process the hair which most of our Indian shaitels come from, they're actually not processed in India, they're processed in China, Korea, are purchasing the hair from, which would imply that the market that they're getting it from is not the temple market. And the overwhelming majority of hair that's exported from India is actually not from the temple. It's from barbershop droppings, or there's some people in India that have like a phobia that after the hair is cut, they don't throw it out into the garbage because they're afraid that somebody who knows them will get a hold of their hair and use that as a way to cast a spell against them. So they just give it away as a gift to someone, some organization that doesn't know them, or they sell it. That hair is a much cheaper grade hair. Now, it actually is logical that our hair doesn't come from the temple because most Jewish shaitels are not naturally black. They're brown, they're more of a blondish color. There are other colors. There's very few Yidden. It's just part of our genes that have a very black Indian type of hair color. So our hair has to be processed anyway in order to dye it and change the colors. So experts in the hair industry said it doesn't make sense. Why would they buy high quality hair, which the mile of that hair is that it's good as is, does not have to be processed, and then go ahead and kill the hair by having to dye it and process it? So most of the India hair goes to hair extensions that people who have that color hair will go ahead and implant in their heads, which is very popular in the African American community. In Hollywood, they're buying a lot of wigs. People who need toupees.
Bottom line is your research says that this is not the hair that we're using.
Exactly. So even if this is Avodah Zarah, it wouldn't necessarily relate to our Indian hair that we're getting. It just wouldn't make sense for them to get it from and pay that premium dollar for hair that they're going to have to ruin anyway. And the purchase invoices indicate that the countries, China and Korea, that are buying the Indian hair are paying way less than the price that the temple is selling the hair for.
Well, Rabbi Bohm, we could go on for hours, and we may have to call you back depending on what the other people say, but this was fascinating, and we very much enjoyed it, and thank you for your time and the research you put into it.
Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure being on the air.
Kulta, bye-bye.
We have with us priest Krishna Atarya of the Hindu Temple and Cultural Society of the USA, a Sri Venkateswara Temple and Community Center. Welcome, Priest Krishna.
Thank you.
Priest, I have a question. We have the famous hair tonsuring that happens in the Tirumala Temple. Can you explain to us what is the purpose of the hair shaving of the head, the hair tonsuring?
Okay. Actually, we have 16 rituals in our life from birth to death. In that 16, this is the called hair offering. It will be also called as a mundan in Hindi language. It will be do the first time near God. First time means when a child was born in 1 year, not after 1 year. First 1 year, we have to do this recital near God. Means the ego-ness don't come to my life. Who is performing? Who is the hair cutting is going to perform to a child? The ego never comes to my life. So the ego is offering to Lord's feet. Means ego never comes in my life. That is the main thing what we are doing, the shaving of whole head and whole head. Yeah, that's the first from the birth to it will be due on 10th month and the child was born. If the boy born in January, we have to do this type of function on 10th month, means October.
Priest, you said it's about egoness?
Ego means selfishness.
So priest, why do we cut our hair off to show that we're not going to be selfish?
The hair replica is the egoness. Told our Shastra, the Hindu religion Shastras told, the head means we have to bow our head near the God's feet. So head means that selfishness. Okay, the replica of selfishness is our head. When we bow the head and when we cut that hair on head, that indicates we have removing all our selfishness near God. Then God shows us a proper way to how to become a good man in the universe. He teach us to how to elaborate ourselves, how to respect each others. She teaches us like that. So we have the replica of egoness, the replica of selfishness, that hair. When we remove that hair, we are removing our selfishness, our ego, our everything near God.
Priest, is the there's another service, and it's called Tul Abraham. Right, when they bring sugar, candy, sugar, rice, in the weight of the person. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Tul Abraham. Could you explain? Is that different? Is that different than tonsuring the hair, cutting the hair?
Yes, that is different because that is not in the. I already told to you in the beginning. There is a 16 rituals from our birth to death.
Right.
In that 16, there is no tulabharam. You are calling tulabharam means that is actually when we are praying to God. If you give something to me, I will give something to you. That is the offering position. That is the offering. If our child wants something, expecting something from us, means if you finish this homework, I will give one donut to you, or one something. If you finish this work, I will give something. This is our regular journey. Same feeling, same type of feeling with God also. If you give us to good wealth, I will give something.
So is Tul Abraham like a gift to God?
Yes, Tulabharam. That calls Tulabharam.
Tulabharam is a gift to God, and the hair tonsuring is the removal of selfishness and ego. Not a gift to God, but the removing of selfishness and ego. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, exactly.
Priest, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it mostly.
No problem. I think you are if you are satisfied my answers.
Yes. Yes, your answers we understood them very well. Thank you. You said that there's a difference. Yes, you said Tul Abraham is a sacrifice and a gift to God, and the hair tonsuring is removal of selfishness and ego, type of humbleness.
Correct.
Thank you very much, Priest.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. We have on the phone with us Rav Lazer Pashkez from the Klausenberg in Monsey, who has written and has discussed and spoken about the topic of the human hair Shaitel. He's researched it extensively, spoken to many Rabbanim, etc. Welcome, Rabbi Lazer.
Shalom Abracha. It's a pleasure to be on.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It is a pleasure to be here today with you to shine a little light about this Indian hair topic that has been refreshed around the old Yiddish communities right now.
Okay, so Rabbi Lazer, could you tell us what has your research and your going around to Talmidei Chachamim and Rabbanim and Rebbes and Dayanim, what has it, share us a little bit of your knowledge.
Okay, I'll go back with a chapter in the history throughout the last 8-9 months that I'm involved in this. It was towards the end of the summer, actually getting closer to the Chodesh El last year, and I heard people talking about this topic, that it's not so pashut that the Shaitels that are going around in the Yiddish market are as kosher as people think. And being that my wife is a Shaitel macher, Baruch Hashem, for 12 years now, it was very, very interesting me to know if the line that I am in is proper and kosher 100%, and if this is what I'm allowed to give people and make money on. So as I was getting closer in the research, I contacted some of the wig makers that I did business with during the past years. There's actually a friend of mine who lives in Muncie. He had at a certain point his own line of shaitels. That means he goes down to a certain factory and he runs his own company. And throughout the years he used to tell me, Lazer, why don't you do it yourself? That way you can make like 100% markup on it or even more. It's just, it doesn't pay to give money to the companies that are doing it. You can do it yourself. So now was the time that I contacted him, and I wanted to ask him, tell me, what's going on over here? I heard people saying, it's not so pashut, the shaitels are coming from India, it could be not coming. Tell me, where do you get your stuff? I know you know it. So it tells me that he has a factory in Korea where he goes down, and over there he makes his run of several thousands of shaitels, and this is what he brings into the Hamish market. So I asked him, where does the hair come from? His answer on that was a question mark. He doesn't know, but something I can tell you that I have a Mashkiach, he has a Hechsher, and he comes down and he has his ways of finding out, and he knows that. But I asked him again, tell me, you're in the line for so many years, and you are there in Korea. Do you know the truth where it is from? He told me no. Okay, that was the end of that. Actually, he did explain me how the Hechsher works, which that is a different point, if we can go into it maybe at a later point. So, at the same time, I called a different company. I asked them, that's a well-known company in Brooklyn, and they supply shaitels like thousands and thousands to the whole market in America. I think maybe they sent to Eretz Yisrael also. I asked them, from where is your hair from? He told me, oh, we have Mongolian hair. Okay, so I have some type of lead. Knowing that there is something called Mongolian hair, I went online and tried to find out. Is there something? How many do they produce? So I saw, yes, there is a country next to China, and this is called Mongolia, and that's what the people claim from where they have their hair. I was trying to see, are there any exporters from Mongolia? I couldn't find anyone from Mongolia selling hair. Actually, at a later time, when I went into the UN Comtrade to see the actual exports from each land, I punched in exports from Mongolia for years 2015, 16, and 17. It came up 0. No exports from Mongolia going out. As I was researching further on this, I did find a company, it's called India Mart. It's actually like an Amazon company based in India, which they have deal with several suppliers in different products. So I saw them selling Mongolian hair. So I gave myself in as I am a wig maker. I want to make wigs. Can you sell me some Mongolian hair? So he tells me, sure, I'll sell you. How much do you want? He gave me a whole list of all his types and sizes and colors. You name it, we give it to you. So as I was going in an email discussion back and forth, I asked him, and I'll read the email exactly that I have in front of me. From where is your stock? So he answered, hi, we have 100% raw temple here, unprocessed. There are one donor donated here. If you want, you can check quality by sample order. Okay, so I asked him back, why are they called Mongolian hair? Well, this is what he answered me. My friend, looking forward to become your trusted supplier. To begin the long association, I would begin by honestly informing you that Brazilian and other Oregon hair do not exist. Since buyers ask for these here, we too have to use such names and sell. It is a farce to claim authentic Brazilian and other hair being made in India or China. All hair are Indian. We inform every buyer truthfully that the origin of all hair is India. However, over the years, we have started making some variations in manufacturing so that hair could be sold as Brazilian, etc., etc. And then he goes on explaining why each type of hair gets a different name according to the quality of it and the length and the body. I understood this discussion to him as somewhat... Yes.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
You went on the UN site and it showed where the breakdown of hair is, right?
Yes.
And which countries, give me some of the countries that the U.S. brings as exporters of hair.
I didn't check all countries. I did check the only few that I heard that they are that the wig makers are making over there. So the first one was I checked actual India itself, and there's you need to know how to put it in because there are a few different codes to put in over there. So the only code that people would use is 6703. That code reads...
No, my question is China. Do they have hair from China?
So here goes a big part of what was a mix-up between 14 years ago and now. Yes, there are very, very, very much hair in China.
Right.
But when looking at India's exports, you see the majority, like 85% of hair exported from India goes straight to China. I actually have that in front of me.
But the UN is talking about countries that manufacture, quote unquote, hair. So in other words, if India sells it to China and then China sells it to the U.S. and the U.S. sells it to Korea, they're not going to count that hair 4 times. So they count Indian exports, China exports, et cetera, et cetera. So my question is, what other countries besides India did you see on the UN list?
I saw several countries. There's India and there is China, Brazil, a slight amount for Russia. But again, all these numbers, as you said...
You're saying the UN is... When the UN says that Brazil is manufacturing here or exporting here, do you think that they're lying to us?
Oh, so let me explain it to you. There is no way of tracking exactly to follow the trail through the UN Comtrade website to see if they are calculating again the same hair that came into China and that went out to China. There's no way of tracking that. You can just see a general amount of hair exported from India going to China. And then there's also an amount of hair exported from China going to the world, to different countries. You can put in whatever you want. But there's no way of knowing if this is the same hair they are talking about or not.
Well, why didn't you ask that to the fellow at the UN who made up the chart? What is he basing it on?
They just keep track of the imports and export of every country. So I believe they themselves don't have a way of tracking that.
So it could be the same hair that's sold 4 times and each country is now being counted.
Exactly, and that was part of the mix-up.
We'll speak to the UN and we'll find out if that's the case.
Exactly. So I was just explaining that in the years 14 years ago, people also made these calculations through the UN, and that's why they came out that the hair exported from India is just a miyut, because they were comparing it, the hair from India versus hair from all other countries, without taking into consideration whatever you just mentioned.
What percentage of Indian hair comes from the temple?
That doesn't say. I haven't found that anywhere. We just tried to make that calculation.
Did you hear the interview with the professor from the University of London who wrote the book about hair?
Yes, I did.
And she said it's a small percentage of the hair in India comes from temples.
Okay, so her statement was based a lot on the owner of the Gupta company, whatever he told her, that he buys just a small amount from the temples. Now,
did you read her book?
Parts of it, yes.
So she has around 40 or 50 different interviews there. So it's not just from the guy from the Gupta temple. I mean, she spent 30 years researching hair, right?
Yes. In her book, she contradicts several times. I don't have it in front of me to show that exactly where that is. But it seems that she is very biased in her books, and she's really making fun of the Rabbanim. And she also claims that she has real mercy on the Indian people. She doesn't want them to lose their business. So, therefore, she was turning around some information. Now, people did ask this question. Yes, there's someone, Professor Emma Tylo, in her book Entanglements, she claims that only a small percent comes from the temples. I have a question to these people. From where does the rest come from?
Well, she said exactly where it comes from, not from temples. People sell their hair.
Yes, so according to the numbers that we have from the temple itself, it really, really adds up to give approximately 80, 85 or more percent of the hair coming out from India is from the temple.
Well, we had on Rabbi Kuber, who said that it's exactly between 12 and 15% comes from Tirupati Temple, compared to the annual exports that India reports to the UN. So how do you explain this contradiction?
So the contradiction goes like this. He made his base that the only temple selling here is Tirupati. Am I correct with that?
That's the 12% was from Tirupati, yes.
So he claimed that the Tirupati was the only temple selling here. Now, wherever you...
He didn't say, he said the 12% Tirupati's annual thing, and it's by far the largest one, he said is 12%. That's the Tonsuring capital of the world. Out of 100%, it's 12%, correct?
Okay, so according to the numbers that I added up, there's on the website from the actual Tirupati temple, they make monthly auctions on that, and they have exact amounts, whatever they sell. I added that up, and it came out to me to be, I don't have the percentages right now. So in their auction they had, it's on their website, dated January 4th. They're saying the monthly auction, and they include the categories 1, 2, and 3. This was what Rabbi Kuber was mentioning. That itself, if you multiply that by 12, that means for the whole year, that would come out itself to 1,000 kilograms. I'm sorry, I mean it's 1,000 ton. Now, on the Indian export itself, through the UN Comtrade, they have 2,781 ton for the whole of India. Now that, to me, is something like a third, not 12%. And that is only from this Tirupati.
So he had different numbers. I'll share your numbers with him, and we'll see what he responds. But he had different numbers. Maybe you're using 1 month, but he had very different, but we'll gladly share your numbers with him.
Okay, and that is focusing only at the Tirupati temple. Now, we have found, if you do a Google search in India for hair exporters in India, there are approximately, you'll have 75% of exporters are next to the temples. That means 34 out of 46 hair exporters are based near the temples. Now, when we're looking at temples, it's a big mistake to think that only Tirupati is the seller of hair. There are many, many, many temples over there. I actually have a printout from the Economic Times where they interviewed a hair trader from Bhavani Enterprises, and he claims he does business with several other temples. I read like this: temples in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh are the major sourcing centers for such hair. And then he says also, this report is from 2013. Now hear what he says. We have increased our sourcing by 7 to 10% from temples as salon hair. Yes, because there were one of the sources of hair that used to be what's from salons.
Can I ask you a question,
Yes.
Rabbi Pashkez?
Mm-hmm.
We're arguing over a Metzias, right? I'll take your numbers. I'll give them to Rabbi Kuber. We'll call this woman. If you agree that it's a small minority, so for you, does the Shaitel go away? Like, I'm not going to sit here. We have somebody that spent 30 years in there. She said she knows all the numbers. This guy researched the numbers. You have different numbers. Okay, let's assume for a minute that they're right and it's a small minority. It's 15%. It's 20%. So do all your issues go away?
No, they do not. But I would like to just add on one
We'll get to the bottom of the numbers. I'm not an
Okay.
accountant. We'll have somebody go through, an analyst go through whose numbers are right. Zolzide. Are you done? Is that the end?
So, first of all, there was Rabbi Yashiv's psak that he held that time that even if it's a miyut, there's
Rabbi
still
Yashiv
this
writes.
halacha.
Rabbi Yashiv writes that 75% of the hair comes from the temple in his psak. Right? Just for the record.
Yes.
So this is what he was told, right? 75%. And then he writes that continue, because I know the psak. Continue.
Okay.
So if he was given wrong information, and it's not 75% but 25%, continue.
In his discussion, it came out, Rabbi Moshe Matzah wrote that in his letter, repeating it from Rabbi Yashiv, that even if it's a miyut, he had this chiddush that there's still a halacha of kol kavua kamechtal nechta on this, being that a goy is also mitzvah on bittul of the krevis of Avodah, so that doesn't help even if it's a miyut. But even if you want to go it that way, for me, this was also enough knowing, even if it is just a minority, if it would have been, this still is not something that I should be dealing with or people should be going with, because the halacha of kol the parish, meruba parish, that is, even if it was so to say that there's only a miyut, this is something when we're talking about someone has something already, that the halacha of Teishach Hanayos, if he got something already and needs to know if it's mutter or aser, then they could say kol the parish, meruba parish. But for me, in my own business, I was not ready to continue giving out to people something that is just, even if it would have been just a miyut, that is not a lechatchila b'chlal.
Okay, let's go through the shilas here. The first shilah is what is the das of the person whose hair is being cut off, right? So do you agree that the authorities we spoke to say that certainly according to the kaimerim of the religion, right, it's not supposed to be a takrevis. Hair is something that's considered ugly, the way she said. It's a davern. It's something of nevala. It's disgusting, and so that's where the kaimer makaveya. What Rabbi Bone was mechadish is that may be what the kaimer are saying, but it's the people have different thoughts. Do you agree with that or no?
Definitely not.
Okay, let me hear.
The kaimerim today that are saying that hair is a davar tamei, that is true. But the reason for the tonsuring is not for taking off a davar tamei. And even if the reason they were saying 14 years ago that the reason for tonsuring is just for hachna, for degrading the person's own ego, halachically this really does not make it not be takrevis of Avodah. And I will explain.
Yeah. Just
like in every mitzvah, we have the halachas of a mitzvah, and there are the tamei mitzvah.
Right.
For example, we slaughter a korban pesach. So there's a mitzvah, the dina a mitzvah, how we're supposed to do it. And there are the tamei mitzvah, which the Torah tells us, al shem shepasach.
Right.
Now, if a person was to go and, why do I need to slaughter a korban pesach? I'll stand on the floor, I'll make a jump, I'll do it for myself, al shem shepasach. That person wasn't the kind of the mitzvah, because the actual mitzvah, the fact of the mitzvah needs to be done how the Torah tells us. And then we have, like the Sefer HaChinuch, that tells us the tamei mitzvah. Now, with this tonsuring, we have the action of tonsuring is, quote by them, it is a choshev avodah. They do it with a whole awe, and they go to it. And the reason behind it could be, possibly, for taking off, degrading the ego. I would be fine with holding that way. That would not help it making it not be takrevis of Avodah Zarah.
Wait, takrevis of Avodah Zarah, Rashi defines as a gift to Avodah Zarah. So if a person takes a shower to wash off his dirt, right, does the water become takrevis of Avodah Zarah?
Definitely not.
So takrevis, exactly like you're saying, there's a geder of what is takrevis. Takrevis has to be, it's a gift to the Avodah Zarah, it's a carbon for the Avodah Zarah. Something that is considered removing a davar tamei is not a gift. So according to your very mushal, it's like dancing by the carbon pesach and jumping. No matter what you're doing something that is not a takrevis. I don't understand your logic.
So here it goes. There are two types of takrevis of Avodah Zarah. The Rashi you're quoting, the Rashi Yevamis, that is talking about something that is given as a dairin, and that does not need any can zvicha or can shvira, anything like that. just by giving something as a gift, that would make it the curse of Avodah Zarah.
No.
Then comes the second part that is in Siv Gimel and Kif Lametes, Shover Makel Lefaneo, and how Rashi explains it, that if the derech was like Kishkish Makel, then this doesn't need, it should be given to the Halil.
But that's because
Just
it's
by
derech.
1 second, just because by an action, the person doing an action of Avodah to Avodah Zarah, that they believe that through this action they're giving a nachas ruach for the getchka, this itself makes it a krevis.
So let me ask you a question. If somebody got up in a Christian church, right, and they cut their hair off, right, for the same reason, would you say it's a takrevis of Avodah Zarah?
I'm not sure about that, but here goes that by the Christians it's not derech havadasa, and over here it is derech havadasa.
The question is, what if the galachim are telling you it's not derech havadasa, and somebody would get up by a Christian church and he said, well, we're going to have some more priests on the show, but so for every single one we've spoken to, I know that some people think they know better how the Hindus, what their avodah is than the Hindus themselves. We've spoken to a number of priests, including a number of experts, and they say it's not derech avodaso. So somebody would come to a church and shave their head off. Would you say that the hair is now, because this person's doing it l'shem takrevis avodah zarah, is takrevis avodah zarah?
So the question that we put for the priest to ask them if it's an avodah, that is not by asking them what the reason they do it for. If you look at the people doing it, and even the priest holds that it is an avodah, did the priest say this is not an avodah?
The priests say very specifically on the program we will have this week, where they say it is not an avodah. We asked them, in fact, there's something else where they offer flowers and candies. They say that is a sacrifice, and this is not a sacrifice. This is a cleansing. They say it's shachar al gabe lavan, and so did Rabbi Weissman say that last week, and so did Emet Tarlau. So we're going to have another, I think, 2 priests say the same thing. So if a guy goes to a church in front of Isaiah Ish, and he shaves his head, would you say that's a takrevis avodah zarah? That's what I'm asking you.
So there it is not derech avodah. It's very hard to go to explain for a priest what we would consider derech avodah. So,
but it's very good to ask him. But it's very good to ask him what the intent is, and when he tells you, you know if it's derech avodah. And he says,
so here goes. You're going back to the intention of that. We are not looking at the intention.
Is this a gift or is it not a gift? And they say, no, it is not a gift, it is a cleansing.
Even if it's not considered a gift,
if it's
we
a
still
cleansing,
hold that.
Yeah.
Yes, even if it's not considered a gift, we still hold that as a derech avodah.
No,
you're
tzemishing the Eitris. I know you're tzemishing the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says that and the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, I think, on Daf Nun Amud Beis, the Gemara says that an Avodah Zarah, that the derech avodah is kishkish v'makel. They bang drums in front of it, and everybody agrees. So if you then take that stick and break it, it's close enough to derech avodah that it's considered a takrevis. If shavar makel is close enough, if they do another avodah with it. But since in a church, right, they don't have any avodah of burning hair. If you cut your hair, even according to the Mechaba, would not be derech avodah. So since in a Hindu church, there is no, a Hindu temple, there is no avodah with the hair. That's what the Kaimrim say. If you shave your hair, even according to the Mechaba, it cannot, or according to Rashi, certainly I don't know it can never become derech avodah. So the only way to make it derech avodah is to say, which is what Rabbi Bone said. Even Rabbi Bone didn't say that the priest that way, because he said, because we already have a psak from Reb Moshe and the first psak from Elyashiv that said it's not. He said no, even though the priests don't, the people themselves do. But no, even what's happening now is that it's just like it's becoming absurd. What Reb Moshe and what Reb Elyashiv already passed, because they respected that if the Kaimrim should at least know their own avodah zarah what they're doing, is that he said no, the people don't know what they're doing. Now you're coming to say no, even I don't know what you're saying. You're saying the priests don't know what they're doing. What is the point you're making?
Let me explain it to you very clearly. The priests, when you ask them, or someone asks them, is this considered an avodah? Is this a gift or an offering? They will say no.
Is this a sacrifice to avodah zarah? That's what they ask.
Okay. Yeah. So in Rabbi Yashiv's first tshuva in Tafshin Nun, he writes there that he understood from the Kaimrim and the Mumchim that the actual tonsuring is not something davar choshev and choshev avodah by them. I'll explain it. One of their customs is before they enter the tonsur hall or the temple, they take off their shoes. Now, the reason for taking off the shoes is to show that self-sacrifice, showing humbleizing.
Respect, yeah.
Respect, exactly. Now, that taking off the shoes, would anyone consider that an avodah?
I don't think so.
For sure not. Okay. So here goes the difference between taking off the shoes and taking off the hair. When a person travels, a Hindu person travels from his house to go to the temple, to Tirupati, or to all other temples out there, will he say, what am I going to do there? Am I going to take off my shoes? Don't talk about that. There's also another part of Hachana to the tonsur. They take a bath. No one will consider the bath or taking off the shoes an avodah because this is not considered something davar chashuv by them. But when a person goes to tonsur, they consider that they're doing something, a special act to the god.
Exactly. What they're doing is they're sacrificing. They're taking their ego. They're removing their ego before they go in. Exactly.
But let me ask you: is this act of removing the ego, shaving the hair, is this considered by them a holy action?
Even if it's holy, it's not a gift to the god. It's not a takrevis.
So here you're contradicting. Before we spoke about even if it's not a gift, this is considered a derech avodah.
No,
you were
it's
saying
not.
that the priests are saying the
priests do not consider it a derech avodah in front of the olil. For it to be a takrevis, there has to be a similar avodah in front of the olil. So you're saying it's not even. You're saying removing the hair is not takrevis, but it's actual avodah zarah. You're saying. Nobody said that. Even Rabbi Yashiv didn't write that. Rabbi Yashiv writes it's takrevis. You're saying it's not takrevis. It's actually a type of avodah.
Yes, that's the way Rabbi Yashiv held in Tafshin Samach.
But Rabbi Yashiv writes it's takrevis. Takrevis means is a separate sift. There's avodah zarah and there's takrevis. You're being mechadish now that it's not only takrevis, but it's avodah zarah atzma. You have a new chiddush in this.
That's the halacha of kishkish makel and shavar makel. That when a person does an action,
okay.
1 second. When a person does any action for the avodah zarah, the thing, whatever he used to do this action, becomes takrevis avodah zarah, and that's what Rashi says. In the beginning of the text of avodah zarah. 1 second. Let me say. There's a Rashi by Daf Nun Aleph Shabbat Matchila Lekach. What does Rashi say over there? Rashi says, I'll quote Rashi. Shebebetzirasam avda la'avodas treichadem. That means that the actual betzira was considered dining the getchka, and that itself makes it for takrevis avodah zarah. So going with that Rashi, and this is Pashkez what it comes out from kishkish makel and shavar makel, which does not need any giving it as a doyer, as Rashi's quote says in Yevamis, this itself makes it for takrevis avodah zarah. And that is only according to the old information that they had.
Pashkez, respectfully, you're mixing up two things. Kishkish makel is the derech avodah, right? And it's chayiv.
Can you explain?
That is how they serve. It's not a gift. That is how they serve the avodah zarah. That is the type of
exactly.
Like,
this is exactly.
Whereas the shviras makel is the takrevis avodah zarah. And since the avodah is with kishkush, you could have a takrevis al yidei shvira.
That's not what Rashi says. Rashi says the kishkush itself is bevadai. This is derech avodah. This is considered takrevis.
That is an avodah.
So what does that mean? Does that mean the kishkush makel meant afterwards they threw it to the getchka?
No. Kishkush is derech avodah, and shvira is. Let's continue. So let's go back. So do you think the kaimrim? What's your point? The kaimrim don't know what they're talking about. Like, what's your point?
No, my point is that by asking kaimrim if this is considered an offering, and even if they would say that it's not an offering, this does not make it not be derech avodah. Derech avodah means anything that is mekubal by the Ovdei Avodah Zarah, that this action is considered a nachas ruach for the Elul, and this is exactly what's happening by the Tonsuring. They believe that by Tonsuring. Let me finish.
You're arguing on Ramesha and the first Pshak of Yashiv, who said that the Kaimrim do know, and you're saying now the Kaimrim don't know, and it is. Let me ask you a second question. Who says that it's the servers that define what is the Avodah? Maybe it's the Kaimrim that define what is the Avodah.
That's something I didn't go through the halacha part of that.
Well, I'm asking you that question. If it's the actual, well, you're saying the Kaimrim also believe it's Avodah Zarah. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes. They
So-
don't know the
so
definition of
you
avodah zarah for us.
So you're saying, you're saying that the Kaimrim who say it's not avodah zarah are wrong and it really is avodah zarah. That's your argument.
The argument is if they can define to us what means derech avodah. Can you explain me in your own? I would love you should explain me in your own words what derech avodah means. What does the word avodah zarah mean?
The word avodah zarah is bowing to an avodah zarah is derech avodah, right? When you give fruit in front of avodah zarah, that's a carbon to avodah zarah.
Yes.
Right? Davening to the Rabbeinu Shalom Havdil is called an avodah, right? A carbon is a carbon. It's two different things, right? You bow down to the avodah zarah, you makabel el malchus of the avodah zarah is one thing, and then you could send money to the avodah zarah. You could send a gift to the avodah zarah. It's a very clear difference.
Okay.
So
let me explain. Let's bring for an example by the Eivishter, considering mitzvahs. Let's take for example the mitzvah of Netilas Lilov. The mitzvah of Netilas Lilov. If this would be on a oifen from Shvira, let's say the pasuk would say Shvartam lechem b'yem harishon, we make a bracha shekadishana b'mitzvah tzvon el Shviras Lilov. Is this considered a mitzvah, an avodah? How do you define that?
Our mitzvah is called avodah. It could be a mitzvah is called an avodah. It's a complicated here.
It's probably not. So by us,
but Pashkez la'avdei b'chol avavchem goes on tefillah. Is a mitzvah also a type of an avodah? Marayi is lakan or lakan, but Pashkez la'avdei goes on tefillah, right?
Exactly. So by us, a mitzvah is considered a mitzvah, and avodah is considered an avodah. Now, l'havdil elef alf avdolos, when we talk about avodah zarah, the way that Rashi explains derech avodah, that means anything that we believe that the goy believes that the avodah zarah has hanor from that includes avodas, mitzvahs, minhagim, whatever they do as dining the avodah zarah by doing some type of mitzvah for it, that is considered derech avodah. Now, if you ask the priests to know if this is considered,
is a carbon also derech avodah? Giving it a gift is also derech avodah?
That's for sure derech avodah.
Well,
we're talking about
then why are you not? Kish makel is whatever. Rabbi Pashkez, we're wasting our time. You have to learn this stuff. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just quoting this thing that the kish makel.
One is chayiv misa and one is chayiv misa and one isn't. So carbon is one is nesar and one you just whatever. I'm just getting frustrated. Rabbi Pashkez, thank you very much. I appreciated your time. Okay.
I would just finish with one thing.
Yeah.
Just in conclusion, I would love people should know that when looking into this halacha and this whole shaila over here, it's one big part of why people are taking it easy is that what I think that the shaila in it here is we didn't grow up with the issue of the curves of avodah zarah. If this would be a shaila of Shmir Shabbos or any other halacha and tarig mitzvahs, people would take it real serious. And here we're talking about something that on the tzad that this is considered avodah zarah, the curves of avodah zarah, there are two lavan on it every time a person has anor from it. It's le'yiv b'yadchem umar ma'acherem and le'yisovi b'tevel b'secha. And then there's the Ramon in Shum Kifni Zayin, and the Gra holds that way that the curves of avodah zarah is in klal of Yeherik Val Yaver. So this is really something that it should be left to the Rabbanim to paskin on that and taking real serious the shaila.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Pashkez. Kol tov, all the best, bye-bye. We have on the phone with us from New York City, Mrs. Berger, who's a researcher who provides the Rabbanim in Eretz Yisrael and in America the information that they use to, Aser, the Indian or human hair Shaitel. Welcome, Mrs. Berger.
Thank you.
So we've had on, I think, 2 Indian priests, a Baal Tshuva who actually lived in India for 6 months, and a lady who spent 30 years of her life studying here. I mean, you talk about, a lot of times, I'm criticized for spending too much time, by my secular compatriots say, what, you spend so much time studying law, Jewish law? And I say, imagine somebody spent 30 years studying Indian here. So we wanted to have as many researchers on from all sides. So we've had this week we have Rabbi Pashkez. Last week we had the other fellow, and we have Mrs. Berger. So share with us your knowledge in this area.
Okay, so I got interested because this past summer there was a little bit of a hullabaloo about the Indian hair. Again, I'm not looking to ask or Shaitels. I just wanted to find out the real facts about the tonsuring. So I decided to look into it just because I was curious, and I'd read an English report that was reviewed by Rebelsky, and Rebelsky was a very big giant, and I wasn't looking to Chas v'Shalom go against Rebelsky's talk. I just was curious to know about the tonsuring, and I started to just, as Rabbi said, I started to just Google it. That's what started it, and I did see this legend about this. I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say her name, but this, princess who gave her hair to this avodah zarah, and because of that action, the hair is considered, anyone that tonsurs at Terumala receives blessings from this avodah zarah, and this other avodah zarah who gave her hair receives all the hair. She seems to receive it. So I was pretty amazed by this because I hadn't read this in Rebelsky's report, and I decided to do something a little bit strange maybe, but just to get a thorough, view of this, I contacted the TTD, which is, they run the temple in Terumala. They're the trust board that runs it. And I sent an email to the information center, and it was interesting. Within a few days, I received an email back from the supervisor, and I had asked them, what was the reason, the belief behind the tonsuring? And the first thing they wrote back to me was this legend, that this is the legend behind the tonsuring. And then they did write that, it also represents, giving up the false ego. But the first response and the main religious reason seems to be this legend. So I started to do more intense research, and I contacted a few different organizations in India. There's another organization called the TTY, which is the Tirumala Tirupati Yatra, and they were very kind, and they answered a lot of my questions. And I contacted, there's a famous comic book series. It's called Amar Chitrakatha, and it's very popular in India. It was started in 1967. They have they printed over 100 million copies of comic books that has gone worldwide, and they have it in over 1,000 bookstores in India. In 2011, they actually issued a series on this legend. They added about the legends of Tirumala, and they focused one book on Tirupati on this legend, and at the end they wrote that this is the reason for the tonsuring. So I actually emailed the executive director of this comic book. Her name is Reena Puri, and I asked her, where's the story coming from, and do people know about it, and what is the belief with the story? And she wrote back to me that this is the most quoted story regarding the shaving of head at Tirupati, and yes, most devotees who have their heads shaved do know the story and believe in it. So I just was so amazed, and the more research that I did...
Can I ask you, Mrs. Berger, you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that if you would be your average person and you go see, let's say, people go to daven by the Kivrei Tzadikim,
mm-hmm.
right? I think the Lubavitcher Rebbe's keva, gets 1 million visitors a year, right?
Okay.
It would seem that Jews daven to dead people, right?
Okay.
And that would be a problem. Wouldn't that be a problem with Avodah Zarah?
Could you clarify your question? What do you mean? You're
davening to a dead person, right? And you're not supposed to daven. It's Bilti Lashem Levada. You're supposed to daven. So all these people, these 1 million people, are going to daven of the Avodah Zarah. Well, for that matter, I was just in Eretz Yisrael. You go to the Belzer Rebbe's keva. I went to Ramosha, but he doesn't get Ramosha. He's next to Bar LaBelza. 1 million people a year go there, and it would seem that to an outsider, it would look like a big chalik of our brethren are now have become over the Avodah Zarah. They're davening to dead people. Is that problematic?
Okay. How is that connected to the tonsuring and the legend? I'm not understanding the connection.
I'm just showing you that when you look at something and you take, so you ask a regular person, he would say, yes, they're davening to dead people. But the answer is they're not davening to dead people.
But see, this
right?
is not only...
So my point is that you can't take somebody and let's paskin from comic books and from things, and let's paskin...
No, I'm not.
We'll start killing. We would kill 2 million people, the people who live in the farm there and there. We start killing 2 million Jews a year, right?
You're right, and I'm not. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting. Emma Tarler herself, she has in her own book that this is the official legend behind the tonsuring.
So when she appeared, but I agree with you, but when she appeared on our program and we asked her that, she said that is clearly part of the legend, but it's not why it's done. So she didn't lie to me, I don't believe, when she was on the air here, right?
No, I don't think she's lying.
So she's obviously very aware of the legend, And she's saying, yes, it's part of, it's multi. There's a lot of pictures here. I could give you 5 other examples of where you would look at Yiddishkeit and you're not a Talmud Chacham and you don't know the Shulchan Aruch, you don't know Halacha. You would say, yes, this is Avodah Zarah. Just a simple
Okay,
example.
so I just want to say that I'm not looking to give a psak whether this is Avodah Zarah or not. But this is clearly, if you would go online and research every single website and every single blog and all the articles that are in different magazines, they quote this story as the reason for the Tonsuring. I'm not saying this as this is the quoted story, and not only that.
We agree with you.
Okay, but then I'm not deciding. Mm-hmm.
So we've had on a number of priests, right, from the temple, right?
Okay.
And we asked them what it is, and they say clearly not, and they're aware of the legend.
Which temple are they from? Because the Tirumala temple, which is where the largest, the large amount of hair is tonsured, that is a belief in Tirumala. They believe in Tirumala that this is why they're tonsuring. Other temples, they have different legends, but this is the legend.
We've had on priests whose expertise is Tirumala. We'll have one on this week, and we go through all the different Avodah Zarahs they have, and he says, no, this is for this reason, and this is for that reason. Notwithstanding all the legends, that's not why it's done. So I think if you could think, Havdol Elf Havdalos in Yiddishkeit, you could take 10,000 midrashim and say, according to this, if you look at it, it seems like, isn't that what why we to interpret a medrash you can't be like a layperson so would you think that that's a good analogy to us trying to interpret the Indian religion?
Well, I think considering that the TTD runs the Tirumala temple, they're the ones who are currently in charge. They oversee everything that's involved in the temple. And they are saying this as the main story behind the Tonsuring, and they're promoting this. They're marketing it everywhere. So it's coming from somewhere. It's from the Puranas. There's a book from the TTD itself where it says, they write in there, I could get it right over here. It says, as per Puranas, hair offered by devotees is to cover up the lost hair. It is a very small portion to Lord Venkateswara Swami. That is their reason that they're giving. So this is the main religious belief. I think all the other reasons, like shedding the ego and humility, which is definitely, it seems to be a reason, and I think it's also a side effect of Tonsuring, because when they remove the hair, they feel humility. But the main religious belief, as in all the actions in Hinduism, it seems there's a legend behind things, so this is the legend behind the Tonsuring. It's very, very clear. And I think this is coming from the higher authorities, too. I don't know why the priest didn't mention it. Again, I'm not looking to argue or debate what the priests are saying. I'm telling you what I found online and what I see has been given to me by emails from many different sources in India. Like the Tirumala Tirupati has an entire website, and they promote, they want to spread their religion and the beliefs, and they, too, wrote this story as the main reason. Actually, as a matter of fact, there's a hill in Tirumala. There are 7 holy hills in Tirumala. One of them is called Niladri. And if you look it up, if you Google it, you'll see that Niladri is named this name because of the actions of this princess, whose name is Niladevi, who gave her hair to Lord Vishnu. So if this was just a random story, there wouldn't be a holy hill in Tirumala named after this Avodah Zarah. This is the story behind the concept.
I understand that, and we've asked this to the priest as well as the expert in the world, and their response was, yes, we give up the hair, we give our hair as a sacrifice of our ego. And you'll hear the priest who's on today, ask him 3 times. I say, what's the difference between this and there's another Avodah there, Abraham or something? He said, that's a gift. He says, but the hair is something that's considered unclean and disgusting, and you wash it off, and you give that is given as showing I don't have any ego as a prerequisite. So we could sit here and argue all day, whether the Galachim have it right or not, but they have this story, and this is how. So
there's something interesting what you're saying.
I'm saying that. I'm just saying. Could you imagine if some Jesuit priest came along and started Pashkez shilas based upon halachas he found on the internet? We've asked the priest, and they say, the story is true. He's saying the story is true, and this is what it means. So we disagree.
I'm not looking to go against Indian priests. I'm just trying to explain to you that if you look at the information and if you read the accounts of pilgrims, and again, I know that this is not necessarily decided by the pilgrims' thoughts in giving the hair. It's decided by the people that are in higher authority there, which is the priests and probably the TTD and the people there. But definitely the pilgrims that are giving their hair, they do believe and know the story, and they are giving the hair because they do think it's a gift. As a matter of fact, they consider all of Tirumala holy, and there are rules in Tirumala, like there's a no-fly zone, you can't bring alcohol, many other rules that they have, because the entire area is is considered holy. So when they go to the Tonsuring hall to tonsur their hair, they feel like they're standing before the deity. They actually virtually think the hair goes to the deity. They do. In many emails that they sent back to me from the TTD and the TTY, they wrote to me that they don't even have to go into the temple because they feel like they're giving it directly from the Kali Nakata, which is the Tonsuring hall. They feel like it's going virtually to the Avodah Zarah, and they are accepting it, and Neil Devi is accepting this here. Now, it's up to the Rabbanim to decide if this is a problem. It's definitely is being taken seriously by Rabbanim. Now, there are Rabbanim that look.
But, Ms. Berger, who is the they who says that they think they're giving it to the deity?
Here, I could read you the emails from the Terumala Terapata Yatri if you want me to read it to you.
No, just tell me.
But it's clearly
emails from who? Emails from who?
From the TTD and the Terumala Terapata Yatra, and even like Rina Puri, the head of the. It's not just a comic book. You have to understand. This is the history book for the Indian people. There are over 1,000, stores that carry this comic book, and they have over 100 million readers, and it's something that has shaped their culture. It's not, if you look online at these comic books, it's not a comic book. It's considered a history book in India. And this story, I could read you what they write. It's very clear. At the end of it, overwhelmed by her selfless act, Vishnu decreed that whoever came to worship him would sacrifice their hair to her. Even now, thousands of Vishnu's devotees flock to Tirupati and offer this highly unusual gift. This is a gift. They're giving their hair to the Avodah Zarah. It's clear. You said the priest even confirmed the story. Atarya has it in her book as the official legend behind the Tonsuring. It's clearly the legend, and they clearly are thinking that it's going to the Avodah Zarah, and the Avodah Zarah is accepting this hair.
So why does Atarya in her interview with us say that is a very superficial reading and is not the intent? Like, why is she?
Okay, so I'm not looking to say anything against Atarya. I'm sure she knows her research. I'm sure she's very informed. But she did write, and she wrote it herself. This is the official legend behind the Tonsuring. So this is. I know you said that.
But we already established that from legends and comic books you can't paskin.
It's not. It's from the Purana.
My point is, when we had Atarya who's the number one expert in the world on this, and are we supposed to believe the emails? Are we supposed to believe the living testimony of the number one expert in the world?
So it's not just an email. If you go and look at it in the Puranas, they have it in the Puranas. There's a source for the story. If you look at the TTD, their website, they have the story there. Again, the hill, there's a hill, a holy hill named after this Avodah Zarah. It's not just a legend. It is a very important legend behind the Tonsuring.
Without a doubt.
And there's something else that you should know that I think is very interesting. And again, I'm not arguing with the hair going into the hundi or not. I know that the priests say it's not allowed in, but the TTD does have 2 ebooks on their website. You could go on their website and look at the ebooks. They have 2 books that were actually published and issued by the TTD, where they write about the hundi inside the temple. And I think everyone's getting very confused because there are different hundis. There's one in the Tonsuring hall, one outside the temple, and then there's the main one inside the temple that's near the deity. That's where they feel like they're giving offerings to the deity. And they have in these 2 books that are issued by the TTD that pilgrims will bring in all sorts of offerings. It says over here, coins and valuables and gold, and it also says tonsured here. So I find it very confusing because here they range from hairs removed from the shaven heads of men and women to diamond jewelry, ornamental necklaces, earrings, gold bangles, etc., etc. That is deposited inside the temple in the hundi there. So then I emailed again. I know you don't like emails, but I did some research and I asked the TTY about it, and he said that sometimes women will get 3 cuts of their hair. Instead of tonsuring all their hair, they'll just get 3 cuts, and they will bring it in and put it into the hundi in the temple as an offering. But then again, he wrote to me, but many don't feel like they have to because they feel like just by doing it in the Tonsuring hall, it's going there to the deity. So there is something that Rabbanim have to look into. There's a reason why Rabbanim are looking into this research because there seems to be a question mark on it. Again, I don't know what the conclusion will be.
Ms. Berger, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Take care.